Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is One Piece Arabasta Saga Kobe and Helmeppo arc, episode 68, Try Hard Kobe, Diary of Kobe Meppo's Marine Struggles. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in this episode. So, in this episode, it begins with the crew. They're on their way to Little Garden. Luffy's getting scolded because he ate the bait, and now they can't fish properly. Haru's freaking out because they want to use him as bait, as an alternative to the bait that Luffy ate. And Vivi kind of starts to question the 30 million berry bounty that's on Luffy, and Nami starts listing off the big names that he'd managed to defeat before Zoro chimes in with the one that she wasn't a part of, which of course was Axe Hand Morgan from the Romance Dawn arc, and this leads to Luffy kind of reminiscing and wondering about Kobe and how he's doing, which moves us into Kobe and how he's doing. We find out, of course, that he's still a chore boy at the Marine based in Shellstown, and he is working with Helmeppo, who now is also a chore boy, and they are cleaning, but Helmeppo's not really into cleaning. He doesn't really have the motivation to do that. He starts missing and thinking about back when he was the captain's son and had everybody underfoot. And ultimately, Kobe and him end up getting into a bit of a fist fight because he doesn't think Kobe's dreams is great, and Kobe can't understand why he doesn't pull his own weight, and they end up fighting, eventually rolling off a roof because they were kind of hanging off the roof to clean the upper story windows. And they end up landing on a cannon that was being worked on by some Marines and destroy an entire building, which of course leads to them at the restaurant with the little girl from that episode and her, and basically saying that they're now going to have to work for 50 years for free to rebuild, to pay to have this building rebuilt. And they are shown a news article where it shows that Luffy has now entered the Grand Line and escaped Smoker in Logtown, which excites Kobe because, of course, it shows that Luffy is making steady progress towards achieving his dream. We then have them on a ship as the base is going to be giving Morgan to the Navy's higher ups, and in this case, the higher up is Monkey D. Garp and his sidekick Beauregard. And while they are making the exchange, Garp has a weak first impression on Axehand Morgan because he's falling asleep because he's been awake for 5 days trying to set a new record for donut eating. But basically, he ends up falling asleep mid-conversation. Axehand Morgan slashes at him before taking Helmeppo hostage and leaving the ship. Beauregard then is like, let's shoot down this ship that he's on. And Kobe gets in the way and says, Helmeppo is my friend. He's on that ship too. Don't you dare. I'll go bring him back like he has any chance. And jumps into the water. He and Helmeppo cement their friendship because Helmeppo realizes that by defying the Navy for him, Kobe's putting his dream at risk, and that's how valuable his friendship is to him, and so they must be true friends, and he has a change of heart and decides to turn against his dad, and they ineffectually try to defeat Morgan before being thrown overboard. Morgan then escapes to cause havoc wherever it is he decides to sail to, and that leaves Helmeppo and Kobe to be punished essentially because, well, Helmeppo, it wasn't his fault. He got taken hostage, but Kobe did cause some trouble. But Garp obviously sees something in them and decides to take them with him to Navy headquarters. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is now time to rank the episode. First on the mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So we start with our multi-arc supporting character introductions, and that, of course, is Monkey D. Garp and Bogard. And they're worth 3 points each. We then have our multi-arc main character growth. In a dream sequence, Luffy uses a new attack, the Gomu Gomu Tornado, to throw a melted Captain Morgan off into the ether. And that's worth 4 points. We then also get our negative messaging or behavior. We have a fight at work leading to the destruction of company property, which is a bad thing, and that, of course, is the initial fight between Helmeppo and Kobe, as they are still chore boys, and they cause the destruction of a building. And then aiding in the escape of a prisoner in the case of Kobe, and what's even worse, he gets rewarded for that. And I do understand what the show was going for versus what I saw are two very different things, but I still think aiding in the escape of a prisoner known to be dangerous, a prisoner who does not value human life, and allowing him to go free to potentially cause despair and destruction and damage to a great number of people and towns. Well, there's that whole, well, one of the episodes of Charmed, for example, the episode starts and they're looking at this book of ethics with like ethical questions. And the question is, if a building was burning, would you save one sibling or 10 strangers? And at the start of the episode, they say one sibling. By the end of the episode, however, they've grown and understood that it should be 10 strangers that they save. Like this, it's like, yes, Helmeppo may have been collateral damage, but when you think about the fact that Morgan, again, has a complete disregard for human life, as shown in his introduction in Romance Dawn arc way back at the start of the series, and the fact that in this episode he's talking about creating his own kingdom, it's very clear that his intention is to escape, to go to a town, take it over to make his kingdom, and how many people is he going to kill to do that? How many people is he going to make suffer like Shelltown did before he arrived, like before Luffy arrived and took care of Axan Morgan? He was overtaxing them. He was causing terror to like the citizens. He was going to literally execute a child for the crime of feeding the person he was trying to make an example of. Like, this guy is bad news and he's going to continue the behavior because he has no remorse for that behavior. So when you look at the consequences of letting this guy go, which we're probably not going to see in the show because he's back in East Blue and the rest of the show is kind of in the Grand Line now, the fact is he's going to cause harm to a lot of people. So that one person, Helmeppo, really, on balance, save the 10 strangers, not the one sibling, is what I'm saying. So I still consider it negative, even though I know that they were going for the whole, look at the power of friendship, wow, idea. That's not how I saw it personally, because I'm thinking of other consequences and how bad Morgan is and the fact that they've let him escape. Now, had the episode gone on to, once they were kicked off the ship, have like Beauregard or Monkey D. Garp go and destroy the ship that Morgan was on, that may have been different because they could have recaptured him after they had their moment. That might have mitigated those consequences, but the show didn't do that. So I'm still taking 2 points. And then, of course, we have the -4 points for the fact that there's no main plot significance. This is pretty much a filler arc to just check in on Kobe. And because later in the series, there is a point where they come back and some of these characters do have some form of importance, but that's not the case at this particular moment. At this point, it is just kind of a filler to take up space while Luffy is traveling. So overall, that makes it a 2 out of 10. Of course, it is the first episode in this arc, so it is currently in first place, even with a score of 2. Try Hard, Kobe, Diary of Kobe Meppo's Marine Struggles. Personal ranking. 1, like I said, there was consequences. 2, not a fan of Kobe, never have been. And while his glow up self is a little bit marginally better, still not overly fond of him. Because I'm not a fond of him, I didn't really get much from the episode. And Helmeppo I do find funny, but um yeah, just not a fan of them as characters, so an episode dedicated to them, not my favorite. Monkey D. Garp, do like him, but he was literally the only good thing about the show. Bogard, I know, is his sidekick and faithful sidekick, but he is a little bit boring as a character because he's kind of fading into the background, but I think he's supposed to, which is why I don't consider it like a terrible quality, but it does mean that he doesn't have much charisma as a character. Like, I don't notice him, I kind of forget that he's there. Again, I disagree completely with the letting Morgan escape. And like I said, if they had done it differently and had Morgan be recaptured after Kobe and Helmeppo had their moment and got kicked off the boat, I probably would feel different about it. But the fact that they let such a dangerous person escape to do who knows what to who knows how many people in the public while he creates his kingdom. And I mean, we could also assume off screen that he's recaptured quickly. However, he was clearly stronger than, the Marines that he had working under him, which is why they never rose up or anything. Um, so how many people are they actually going to have in East Blue that are going to be able to stop him? Now Luffy's gone. I mean, he's no longer got the title to protect him, so maybe there will be some Marines that are strong enough to recapture him, but when is that going to happen? How much damage is he going to do before that? Too many questions, too negative of a connotation. So, next thing is, what did I think was positive about the episode? And that ultimately is Garp. I like that he's having a donut eating competition with himself to break his own record, and it's so important to him that he stayed up for 5 days in order to get it. When he's slashed, he's sleeping, everybody thinks he's been killed, and then he wakes up and everyone's like, "We thought you were dead." He was like, "Someone's been attacked?" "Oh, I missed it. I was sleeping. Who was attacked?" Looks down, sees the cut, and he's like, "Me?" And it's like, great. And then he rewards poor behavior, though. And that is not good because, again, I understand what they were going for in the episode. Kobe finally finding the courage to stand up to people to save his friend. Hurrah. But again, because of those negative outcomes related to that, it didn't mean anything to me. But Garp was funny. He is wearing a dog head hat, and that is also kind of odd. Um, but literally, like, I only liked Garp and for like a couple of lines in the episode. So, oh, but I did also enjoy the comedy on the ship before we went into this whole Kobe Meppo arc, with Luffy eating the bait and everything like that. So, taking that into account, I have decided to give it 2 points out of 10, matching the objective ranking in this case, though for different reasons. And again, it's the first episode in the arc, so it's in first place. Try Hard, Kobe, Diary of Kobe Meppo's Marine Struggles. And that now brings us to our saga ranking so far. Reverse Mountain Arc is in first place on both lists. Whiskey Peak on both lists is in second. Kobe and Helmeppo currently in third on both lists with a score of 2 out of a possible 20. And that brings us to the series ranking so far. And we have East Blue Saga in the first place on both lists because it is the only complete saga so far, and Arabasta Saga is in second. One with 17 out of 70 on the mostly objective, and then with 11 out of 70 on the personal ranking. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked One Piece Arabasta Saga Kobe and Helmeppo Arc, Episode 68, Try Hard Kobe, Diary of Kobe Meppo's Marine Struggles, Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.